Hey, I'm Benjamin Verbacek, and I'm the lead pastor of Community Evangelical Free Church. I'm also the managing editor for Gospel-Centered Discipleship, and I'm coming to you from our Writers Coaching Corner, we call it, where I get in front of the camera and I talk about one article that appeared on our Gospel-Centered Discipleship website last month, and not only one article, but one paragraph within that article, and what was going on in that paragraph that we could learn from as writers, and how do we get that into our own prose. And so the principle I'm going to talk about this week is good writing seeks publication. Now, before I get into the article, I'll just say we probably need a caveat there. I really don't think all good writing always seeks publication, right? There's good writing that might happen in a card from one person to another, handwritten. That's not necessarily seeking publication. You might do, in a sense, even though it's probably not helpful to evaluate this, because it would ruin it, but good writing might exist in a journal. Just your own private journal, you're writing, and it's good writing, and it's not seeking any kind of publication. So it doesn't have to. But I will say there is a kind of good writing that does seek publication. And so if that's true, how would we go about doing that thoughtfully? Because ordinarily, publication does have to be sought. It doesn't just land on you, at least ordinarily. You might be looking to publish over here, but then sideways someone kind of comes into the picture, some organization or book proposal even perhaps might land on you sideways, but it was probably the case that you were seeking publication other routes, unless, of course, you're famous or some other wonderful or tragic thing happened in your life, then publication might seek you another way. But generally, good writing has to seek out publication. So how do you go about doing that? So there was an author who published an article called 11 Tips for Getting Published Online. Oh, and look what happened. It's another article from me. I'm sorry to do this 2 months in a row. I think I need a promise that next month I'll find somebody else to get an article from. But I wrote an article, 11 Tips for Getting Published Online. It's not a picture of me. I don't have a sleeve tattoo thing on my forearm, although this guy does over here. I thought it was a cool picture. Anyway, what I say here in the opening paragraph is I have a number of writing friends who desire to write, at least occasionally, for websites other than their own blog. I can understand this because I feel the same way. I've written for enough websites to see the benefits, and I don't simply mean the ego boost that comes from writing for this or that website. I mean the benefits of learning from real editors and learning to serve different audiences with words that glorify God and edify His people. That's our true goal, right? At least I hope that's our true goal, isn't it? To have our own character shaped and to glorify God with our words and to serve others. And so I give a number of tips. I'm not going to go through all 11 by any means. Just I want to highlight a couple and say a few things that I didn't get to say when I was writing this. So the first is, I have this section here, start small. Start with small strategic articles sent to publications where you might have a good chance of being published. And there I talk about those websites that are open for submission. So just to be kind of blunt, you don't start trying to write for Christianity Today or the Gospel Coalition or the biggest website you think, The Atlantic or New York Times, right? What you need to do is start small. And there are a number of websites. I'll just list a couple here. There's the Joyful Life website they have, and this will be the theme over the next few websites here. If you go to their website and it says work with us, there's literally something that says write for us in print, write for us on our blog, and you can click there and it'll take you deeper into their website and tell you how to do that. For the Church is another website just like that. They have a bar up the top called Submissions. You can click that and it'll take it to their submissions guideline page. Phantom Mag has a good, clean website, always publishing neat content. So it seems, I'm not super familiar with them, but from what I can tell, it always seems very well done. They have About, and then they have a tab at the top, Writing for Phantom. So you can click there and learn more about that. And then, of course, there's yours truly, Gospel-Centered Discipleship. You can go to our homepage, and then in the corner there's Writers. There's all these coaching videos right here, but at the top we have submissions, and you can go there and look at the guidelines and how we would encourage you to go about doing that. So that's what I want to say at first, is that go find those websites that are actually asking for submissions. Build a little familiarity of what it means to pitch articles and have articles edited and have articles published and to promote them without being greasy. Do that for a while, maybe a year or two or longer. And once you've done that for a while, then you might seek to submit to places that, what I'll say, appear closed from the outside. Now, I want to give you 2 tips for writing for closed publications when that time comes. And this isn't in the article, but I will say it now. It came up in the Writers Guild as we were talking about this. Someone suggested something I think it's helpful to say here, and that is, first, when you reach out to a publication that appears closed, you want to do so by staying in your expertise. Now, for me, I mean, we don't have an unlimited amount of expertise. If I have any expertise in anything, it might be in the topic of writing, it might be in the topic of preaching, maybe in the topic of sexuality. I've written a book about to help people struggle not with pornography, but against it. So these are areas that I've thought a lot about, trying to be helpful with words. And so if I was going to pitch a larger publication, I'd try and stay within an area that I have, at least comparatively speaking, some measure of expertise. Now, here's the second thing when pitching to a bigger website or organization, or at least whatever appears big to you. Besides staying in your expertise, I would say this: try to get an email introduction. So maybe you have a friend or two that has written for whatever publication you'd like to write for. Reach out to that friend and see if they'd be willing to do an email introduction of you to whoever they work with, whether it's an editor or somebody else at that organization. I often find that's very helpful. Now, if you do this, here's what I want to say. Be ready to submit your article or your pitch really quickly after you've made that email introduction. A number of times, friends have asked me, in fact, just to be candid, I'm almost never going to do this for people anymore because they bobble that exchange. After you do that email exchange for someone, what you want to see is a nice, clean, crisp, not greasy, but friendly, conversational follow-up. And if you're ready to do that, then ask a friend to do it. It's not a bad thing to do. In fact, as an editor for a website, I like that because I sort of know, this person who I know is a legit writer is introducing me to somebody else. And to be honest, I want to publish good content, so I'm always happy to hear those introductions. So those are a few things I just wanted to mention. The last thing, if I go back to my article, I have this thing here. It says, offer to do grunt work like writing book reviews. I do think that's a helpful way to start getting published. There's a kind of article that is hard to write and it doesn't get a lot of traffic, but if you're willing to do that and over-deliver, then I think that's a wonderful way to get an in at publications. Now, in the article, I say you might just have 3 weeks to do that. And let me just tell you, right now I'm writing a book review for a website, and it's not going to be published for 6 months. And yet, when I got the PDF of the book to review from this author and this publisher, I still only have 3 weeks. 1 week to read, 1 week to write, and 1 week to edit and then submit it. And I'm going to try and do all of that. We'll see what happens. A little bit faster than I told them that I will do it, or said I would do it, just so that I can over-deliver when it's done. A couple resources I'd love to share with you. Here's an article from Tim Challies. It actually appeared in 2019, but he says 6 reasons for you to consider writing. I think all of these reasons are well thought through, as I really appreciate everything Tim writes. But here he says, promotes humility, and it says, helps you grow in godliness. And I really think not just writing, but I would say writing for publication helps you grow in godliness. Now, it might do the opposite. It might grow you in pride and arrogance and all of those things. But I think when done rightly, when you submit yourself to the process, when you receive the editing from good editors as a gift, then I think it will help you grow in godliness. And Tim talks about that here. 2 just book resources. I'm going to go ahead and plug because I loved it. Tim's book, Seasons of Sorrow. Now, when I say I loved it, I did write a review of it on my own blog and published that a couple weeks ago. But I also want to say I hate it. I hate that this book had to exist. 2 years ago, Tim's oldest son passed away unexpectedly in college. And this is Tim writing about the seasons after that, the fall, the winter, the spring, the summer, and then back around to the fall and all that happened. I think it's wonderful writing. I think it's pastoral. It wrestles with suffering, the kind of suffering you might be going through or someone you know is. And so I think it's a wonderful book. It's a good example of good writing, but it's also a good example of pastoring and wrestling with grief. The other book I want to suggest is, and I mentioned this in the article about getting published, is Brett Lott's book, Before We Get Started. The subtitle is A Practical Memoir of the Writer's Life. And there is a chapter, there's a number of chapters that I love, but there's one in here about rejection and the way Brett went about receiving rejection and sending articles back out that I think is just, it's just wonderful. I'd love for you to get the book, check it out. I get no royalties or kickbacks from anybody who picks up any of these resources. I just suggest them because I've benefited from them personally, as I hope you're benefiting from these coaching videos. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next month.